All right. So I actually met Arec on an Open in Indiana meeting, and I've been able to invite him a couple other places and do a one-to-one with him. And Arec's just a fantastic guy. Like a lot of people, COVID affected his career in a negative way. And as a positive person he was able to turn that around and decide, hey, I've got this creative side of me. I want to start my own business, and branched off on his own. And he started this successful murder mystery business, and we're really excited to have him here today. So, Arec, when you're ready, go for it, man. We're excited.
Thanks, Jamie. You guys are you guys are really hyping me up, and it's being recorded, so we have that extra pressure layered on top of everything. But I'm going to break it down really simple for everybody. What we're going to do today is go through my process that I use when I write murder mysteries. I'm going to start by explaining some of the story building concepts. We're going to learn a little bit about that side of things. We're going to have some examples from real life, media, books, and things like that you're all familiar with. And then we're gonna go through some of the steps and decide together what kind of murder mystery we want to write. We're going to build on each other's ideas. We're going to give feedback to each other. Sometimes we're going to disagree with each other, but it's all part of that creative process where we want the end result to be as good as it can be. So that's my goal today, that we learn a little bit about stories, we learn a little bit about communication, and also how much fun what I do can be for people. So we'll start very quickly with an icebreaker. I'm going to get everyone involved early on here. And I want you to think of your favorite story, something that stuck with you that like the back of your hand, that book that you always turn to and read, and that TV show you don't mind watching reruns of all the time. But what is your favorite story? And try to explain it in 30 seconds to someone that has no cultural knowledge. So you're sticking to the core elements of what makes that story a story. Who is feeling super brave and wants to impress everyone by going first? All right, with no volunteers, go ahead, Christy.
I want it to be me, but I don't have a story. Like, am I 12? Because Harry Potter is what I'm thinking of.
All right, Christy, that's really good. So tell me why Harry Potter has stuck with you, and why is that the first thing that jumps out?
Because I have read all of those books many times and watched all of those movies many times. And I just love them. Now,
boil it down to something that you can explain in just a few sentences.
Okay. A wizard who doesn't know he's a wizard, gets attacked by some crazy creature. This is terrible. And then he goes to wizard school and makes all these friends and becomes a master wizard.
And what happens at the end?
He is victorious, and I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and if I remember right, he's victorious because of the power of love, right? It was his mother's love that protected him, and the love of all of the friends that he met along the way and his mentors that kept him rooted in his morals. And then when he gets to the final encounter with the bad guy, it's those morals and that love that he feels that keeps him on top, right?
Correct. You're a way better storyteller than I. But yes, nailed it.
Yeah, no, it's a really good example and something that a lot of people are familiar with. Who else wants to take a stab at it?
I'll go for it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories it's actually from a movie. It's about a young man who his entire life everybody told him he couldn't do something. He was too small. He was too stupid. And everybody tried to hold him down, and his family wanted him to go into the family business, and he had no desire to do that. He wanted to play college football at the best university in the land and graduate from there. And he worked really hard to make that happen. And he prayed a lot, and God blessed him with people along the way that saw his vision and carried him along the way. and helped him overcome his learning disability and overcome his athletic ability. And he actually did make it on the best team in the land, even though his family didn't believe him. And at the end, he was able to play in a game and actually made a giant play to end the game and end the movie. And now a bunch of his brothers and sisters have gone on to college. And that's something they never would have done if he hadn't stepped out and done it on his own.
That's good, Jamie. Tell me what the moral of the story is.
Don't ever let anybody tell you no. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't.
That's fantastic. And what a powerful way to demonstrate that idea than through a game that we're all familiar with, right? And something that we're going to do through this exercise is pull from things that already exist and that we're already familiar with, but we're going to combine them in a creative way. Let's get one more, if Ryan or Sammy wants to go, or Tom, right?
Yep.
Is Tom still with us? Yeah.
Yeah, I can go. So my favorite one is a movie, and it's about the period at the beginning of World War II when Germany's starting to roll over everything, and a couple's trying to escape, and so they go to Africa, to Casablanca, because they hear there's a gentleman there that can help them get out, and they go into his American restaurant, and that's where you hear that famous line of all the gin joints in the world, you walked into mine. The thing they clicked there was the lady that is married was the bar owner's old girlfriend. So he was kind of mixed on whether he should help them or not. In the end, he does help them to get away after working with the local authorities and having to do a little bit of murder and stuff. And then so he says he's going to go with her, but he does not. Then the other famous line from that movie is everybody always says, "Play it again, Sam." And just so you know, that line was never in the movie. So that's my favorite movie.
That's another good example. Thank you, Tom. And what would you say the moral is for that one?
A moral. Wow. I would think that the moral would be do the right thing, even if it's not something you want to do.
Okay, very good. I'll talk a little bit about myself, and then we'll jump into the rest of the thing. I started this company in May last year, just kind of as a part-time hobby, but it kept me and my family and my friends together with a little bit of distraction, and yeah, we can use that now more than ever. I write these stories, I host the parties, I customize them for people's events. And I have a partner in Denver who's still part-time with it, but he's supporting me with things like website design and marketing strategies. If you think my prices are too high, it's his fault. So yeah, don't put that on me. But as we go through this exercise, I want you to know that I'm just here to be the guide. If there's a direction that you want to go in, I'm not going to say this direction is correct and this one is not. It's really trying to make it a smooth process for you. So we'll start with world building. During this first part, we create the skeleton, is what I call it, of the story and the world that we're going to be operating in. And you see down here that we're going to be focusing on setting, theme, and tone for this part of the demo. But the way this works is we'll go through, I'll explain each of these things, and then we'll make a decision together as a group. So starting at the first one, looking at kind of the setting here, do we want a realistic type murder mystery, or do we want one that's a little bit more fantasy, whimsical? And there are a few different ways that this can happen. So you can do something that's set in current times with realistic. You can go into the future. You can go into the past. But most of what happens is based in reality. We're going to be stretching suspending belief in some situations, but for the most part, we all know how it works. On the fantasy side, there are magical things. We've already talked about Harry Potter, and we have a wand that can solve all of the world's problems, and and then you also have like high technology type environments like Hunger Games and Star Wars. where we're using technology that we've never seen and we may not ever see in our lifetimes. But that introduces some elements. So starting here, is anyone feeling strongly about any particular idea so far?
I'm very
I
realistic.
like oh, go ahead.
No, I just said I'm a very realistic person, but I'm okay either way. We watched all the Star Wars, so whatever you want.
Okay, other thoughts?
I am open to whatever, but mostly whimsical and magical. But we've
I
already
do like
gathered.
the Harry Potter idea. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people like magic, but maybe there's a way to blend the two, since we have Jamie talking about doing a realistic setting. Maybe there's a way we could do like an illusionist type story where there is magic, but is it really magic? You know, that kind of thing. What do we think about that idea?
I love that idea.
I think it's
Love
fantastic.
Okay, so let's start there. And obviously that's not really enough to, to make a murder mystery on its own. So let's talk about some of these other ideas. When we're choosing a location, we want to answer those two questions you see on the screen. Why is our group gathered? So why are we in this spot? And why are we isolated from the rest of the world in some way? With most murder mysteries, you have a group of people that's trying to solve the murder. And for whatever reason, they're not involving like the outside world. They're not calling the authorities. They're not like just leaving after someone gets killed. So let's brainstorm a couple location ideas and see if we can answer those questions.
One thing that comes to mind to not involve the authorities is that there's other illegal activity you're trying to cover.
That's a good idea, Ryan. And a unique one so far.
That's good stuff. I was going to joke that Christy, Sammy, and I all grew up within about 20 miles of each other. So if we can get as far away from Indiana as possible, that might be good. Maybe a beach or something tropical.
Yeah.
Something in the mountains.
Well,
Mountains. Yes.
are we all supposed to be like learning something like on like the highest point of a mountain that involved
Nailing it.
something?
Nailing
As long as
it.
I can breathe.
We'll take care of you.
All
You're
right,
all right.
Let's build on that. I'm going to put it on Tom. Tom, can you think of a place that is in the mountains where illegal activities would be happening? And what was the third thing? It's far away from Indiana.
There you go. I think we may have lost Tom.
Okay. I'll throw it to Sammy then.
Well, I've never been out of the country, but doesn't like Sweden and Germany, don't they have a lot of places over there that are kind of?
Yeah, the Alps run through. They run through Germany, Austria, Switzerland. Yeah.
Let's do Switzerland. They got mountains.
Yeah,
and a bunch of illegal money.
Okay. And maybe we're outside, but maybe we're in a building. What's a building or someplace outside where these illegal activities would be happening?
An igloo.
Oh,
I was going to say a ski lodge, but igloo sounds pretty cool.
Okay, let's talk about the merits. Here's our first like conflict point. So when we do this for a team building thing, we'll want to, talk about how to disagree with people productively and still move forward. So we have two conflicting ideas, an igloo and a ski lodge. Let's talk about the pros and cons of those.
An igloo seems cold.
Ski lodge seems warm.
Uh-huh.
Right. No, I agree.
But ski lodge might also have other people trying to stagger in.
Oh, an igloo would be more like remote or isolated.
Ski lodge might have a bartender and a chef.
I was mostly thinking snacks, but I'm just being selfish.
I don't know. The ski lodge lends itself to, you know, the deeper, bigger operation than an igloo might. It's be a little difficult to build the igloo for a whole group of people.
You're right. It might have more resources, more something for us to, bathroom.
Minor necessities.
I think that's perfect. All four of you jumped in and gave a little bit of input there. And that's really the goal with those types of situations, because now we all own the decision that comes at the end here, where we decide, all right, ultimately, which way do we think we're going? Sounded like ski lodge to me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We had, I think, 5 or 6 different positive points for ski lodge and a couple for igloo. Like it's not a bad idea. There are no bad ideas, but maybe we're more comfortable in a ski lodge, and that's easier to work with going forward. So let's go that route. Any dissent?
No, sir.
Nope. Okay. I'm just throwing back what I'm hearing, so feel free to disagree at any time. All right, so I do want to, before we jump into the style, I do want to nail down what type of nefarious thing is happening in this ski lodge.
Well, if it's Switzerland, counterfeit watches.
Okay, that would be interesting. Yeah, and very thematic. We could do a lot with the concept of time, and the clock is ticking, and we have to solve this murder. You see timers being used with things like explosives, and with maybe there's a poison that has a certain amount of time left. But yeah, thematically, time is a big one there. What's another idea?
I was kind of picturing an Ocean's 11 scenario.
Ooh, okay. Maybe we just robbed the bank and this is where we're storing the cash.
That could be good stuff. And you don't know whose team anybody's on. You think you know who's working together, but you're not sure. Not sure who's going to turn around and stab somebody in the back and take it all.
That's interesting. And someone already did. That's why it's a murder mystery, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. I like those ideas. But let's go ahead and move down to the style. So there's a spectrum here ranging from silly to serious. And as we are, the next portion after this would be creating characters. And that's a more independent activity where you work on it on your own and then you bring things back to the group. But we still want to keep things generally in the same ballpark at least. So if we're all on the same page with the range from silly to serious and then deep to wide, it helps keep everyone's characters in a place where they make sense together. So you've got a couple of examples there. You've got a children's cartoon show, Pokemon. Anyone that has kids know that there are lots of silly TV shows out there. And then something that's very dark and serious, like the Batman Christopher Nolan trilogy. But what are we feeling today? What's our mood?
I kind of like the silly. I don't know. But I've been watching a lot of Titans, so I've got like the dark vibe already.
She's like, I'm tapped out on dark vibes. I also really love John Wick movies, so I'm in a weird place.
Me too.
Are we meant to be together? Sidebar, we'll do one alone.
Yeah, we need to.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's no reason why we can't go dark with it, and maybe it's the kind of self-aware darkness where it's over the top and exaggerated, so we can still enjoy ourselves and have fun with it. We don't have to actually feel all of those big, deep, dark feelings, right?
Right.
Okay, so maybe gritty and maybe a little dark. The next one, we're not going to dive too deep into this, but I just want to talk about it a little bit. In different works of literature, in different movies and things, there's a spectrum that runs three ways: deep, wide, and then shallow and narrow. You think about the Lord of the Rings universe that J.R.R. Tolkien created, and he invented several different languages. He's got, millions of years of history that he wrote for that series. And we all know the movies, but he's got other supporting works around all of that tons of named characters and describing foods, and he gets really deep and wide with that story. I'll just contrast that with something like The Martian. It's a very narrow scope, what they're doing with that book and that movie on Mars, but they go really deep with it. And they get very detailed, and they've done their research, like how would a man survive on Mars by himself for several months? Now, contrast that with Avengers, where it's pretty wide, but not very deep, right? We're not going to get into explaining the science. We're not going to, we're just going to focus on the action and keep it moving along at a pretty good pace. But those are some of the directions that we could go with the story. I find that usually for murder mystery games, it's easier to stay pretty narrow and pretty shallow. We want to be able to we want to be able to write something that makes sense and can be explained in a short period of time, something that people are already familiar with and can latch onto. But that's not a reason to not go deep or to not go wide. It's just there should be a reason. The last thing here is rules. And rules is in quotation marks because it's not the rules for how to play the game. It's the rules of the world that we're building. So we can't leave this ski lodge maybe because there's a snowstorm, or we have to solve the murder in a certain amount of time, let's say 3 hours, or the murderer is going to kill again, or he's going to get away, or she's going to get away. But those are examples of rules that we'll want to establish so that we know the constraints of the world. Like, why can't Sammy just call someone and say, hey, come get me. Someone died and I'm out of here. All right. So after we go through a couple more slides of world building, we get into character building, which is where the group creates their own characters that are going to operate in the murder mystery. So we'll talk about one of the pieces of character building. And the first thing that we'll do is decide what people's role is going to be. An important thing to do with a murder mystery game is to make the characters easily distinguishable from each other, and to give them differences that we can use. Because if they're all the same, it makes it hard to have an unequal distribution of information. It makes it hard for them to keep track of each other and remember, oh yeah, this person does this and that person does that. But let's talk about some possible roles of a group of people at a ski lodge, and throw out ideas.
I could be the funny bartender that gives good advice.
Sure. Yeah, we need a bartender at a ski lodge. I'll note something important with that one. It's an employee and not a guest. and knows more about the building maybe than other people. So it's a useful role to have functionally.
I think he called me guilty already.
I know. I'm like envisioning like I want to be ushering people to where they go and like herding cats. Not
The concierge.
yes, like the hostess, the concierge.
The hostess, maybe the owner or the manager would fill that kind of a role. Or maybe you're a regular that is just super friendly and wants to show people around and, hey, have you checked out the ice machine and blah, blah, blah.
Or somebody that just wants to be in everybody's business, so she gets involved.
I love that.
Yeah, like the one that's like gossiping and then always yells at everybody when they bring their skis inside and like has the dirt on everyone.
That's a good role to have as well. What's another thing?
What about the foul-mouthed ski lodge maintenance person?
Yeah, the guy that does the dirty work and knows some dirty secrets and
his name's like Bob.
maybe has. This is the guy that would have access to maybe tools and information and would know a lot about the environment.
Hidden doors.
The guy that entertains all the single ladies.
Okay, yeah, we've got the rich playboy. What's he good for?
Entertainment.
Got a lot of money.
Distracting the killer while everyone escapes.
Say that again?
Distracting the killer while everyone escapes.
Okay, yeah, could be.
Or like maybe he's always trying to make a trade. Like, I'll tell you this if you do this for me, or tell me this, or.
Yeah, this is someone whose stature matters in the outside world. Someone that has a lot of motivations and someone with a lot of resources, but has been separated from his resources in this situation and is very motivated to get back to them, which is an interesting dynamic. Okay, we'll wrap up that part. That was fantastic. Thank you everyone for those ideas. The next line there you see is flaws and strengths. I lead with flaws because I think flaws are a lot more interesting than strengths. And I'll talk briefly about my own. Like I'm a very confident person on the strength side of things, but I can come across as a know-it-all and arrogant if I am not, presenting myself well or being careful about what I say or how I say things. So our flaws and our strengths often go together. And for our characters, we want them to have flaws and not just be good at whatever they're good at and be very boring characters. So when you're making a character, make them interesting. And then next thing here, preferences, quirks, catchphrases, dislikes. This is just building out a little bit of personality for the character. I wrote one recently where as I was going through and creating each character, I gave them an emotion, and everything I wrote for that character tried to incorporate that emotion. So I had one character whose word was happy, and another one was lonely, and another one was angry. So even though it's me doing the writing for all of them, and I'm not the strongest creative writer, but this was a technique to force myself to make them all different from each other and make them interesting. But as you make your characters, you'll want to do things, and adding catchphrases, especially adding a random dislike that if it comes up in conversation, they can say, "Oh, don't talk about that. I hate that." Really spices up the game, and you don't know if you're going to get into a situation where you get to use that and break it out and have your moment. But if you do, it's going to be a lot of fun. Same thing with preferences. And then using all of those things that you've started, so using the role in the group, flaws and strengths, and then all of those other pieces to start fleshing out the backstory. I gave this character the strength of being, let's say, someone who thinks very quickly, and then their flaw would be they often make mistakes or jump to conclusions quickly. And I'm going to work that into their backstory in an interesting way, where something happened and it shaped their life going forward based on their flaw or based on their strength. And then the last thing you'll do is give them a name. All right. After we go through the character building process and everyone collaborates on their characters, and then we introduce our characters to each other, and then we try to get them all matched up in terms of how well developed they are. After that, we wrap up the story building process. We'll talk about motive during character creation, but now we need means. So how was the person, how was the victim killed? And we'll talk about opportunity. Which of the characters had opportunity to murder the victim? And then based on those things, flesh out the storyline. What was the sequence of events that led us to the murder? And what are some possible things that could happen as the story progresses and we try to solve it? And we'll think about those things and see if we run into roadblocks and maybe redirect and add more details or change certain details that don't work. NPCs are non-player characters. Maybe we need someone to come in from the outside that's not played by a character to present a key piece of information. Maybe there's a coroner that is going to tell us something about how the victim was killed or something like that. We'll introduce some red herrings. We don't want the story to be too easy to solve, so we'll give some false clues and maybe point the finger at each other in different ways. The character creation process usually introduces resources, limited resources, and motivations. So we will basically get everyone on the same system in terms of resources. So we talked about the rich playboy earlier. If the amount of money that he has matters, then it should matter to everyone. And we should give everyone some amount of money, even if that amount is 0, right? If money doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter and we don't need to do that. But we'll go through those things. And then the conclusion. The unfortunate thing about building the murder mystery together is that we won't get to play it because we all know how it ends. But what I'll do at the end is provide a little bit of narrative and wrap everything up and give us some closure for the story. This is a really good group activity. As people are moving back into office culture and work culture, and you have teams that are working together that have a high level of communication, things can get kind of weird. I know, especially for my wife and I, small talk with our friends was weird for a month or two when we started seeing people again. And I've talked about being able to disagree with coworkers, being able to build upon ideas, being able to innovate. This exercise in unlocking your imagination is a great way to smooth over some of those rough spots that the pandemic has caused. But yeah, and this is actually a good point for me to pause and ask you guys, like, how are you feeling? Do you have like a little creative buzz going on right now?
For sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you feel that. And that was with me talking through like half of it. You did a little bit of work with your imagination, but you already have a little bit of that buzz going. It's just it's incredible what this does to the chemical balance like in your brain. I customize it. I've already talked about that, but I can incorporate it to an existing meeting like this one. I've shortened to the demo. We can do recognition events, etc. Let's see. I'll pause for questions and then I'll let Jamie take back over.
I have a question. Or Jamie, do you want to
Yeah.
go? I think you have your hand up.
No,
for a
please.
minute.
No, please go.
Okay. is there usually like a magic number of people that you like to have for these? Like, or like once you hit double digits, does it get too many people, or you know what I'm trying to say?
This is probably the best run that I've had with only 4 people. So at the low end, I really like 6, but we did really well today with just 4. And I really want to thank you guys for being so like open and willing to jump in and not just let me, flounder up here on my own.
And it's my very first time at this meeting, so I just like walked right in talking about Harry Potter, not knowing about anything.
Yeah.
And I love that you just said flounder.
Yeah. At the high end, I would say I can work pretty well with a crowd, I think up to 15. After 15, then not everyone gets a chance to contribute as much as I would like. But then again, there are some people who don't want to contribute as much and would rather just enjoy the show. So yeah, just want to keep everyone comfortable there. But thank you for the question.
Absolutely. Do you ever have situations where maybe the executives will get together and they'll help develop the characters, and then you come back and do the presentation for their employees, and it makes it seem like it's already incorporated into what they're doing?
I'm working on one of those for my mom got a part-time job out in Montana working at a nursery. And she's going to write one with the high school kids that she works with for all of the old ladies that work in the office of this nursery. So the answer is yes, it can be done. Now I'm going to charge them more because that's a lot more work, but they're going to love it. And it's going to be like, it's going to be everything that they want to get out of it. And yeah, those ladies that work in the office are just going to be tickled to death. And I'm sure the high schoolers are going to learn a lot and have a great time with it too. So yes, great question, Jamie. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Question 2 is, if we developed any characters or situations for you today that you haven't thought of, do we get any royalties for this going forward?
I have so many stories already that probably not, but
I'm just messing.
I do get.
He's saying ours are good enough.
I do get. Well, the issue is it takes me so long to finish one. It's not that the ideas aren't. I have like 3 that I'm working on right now. So getting around to this and actually typing it all out and making it pretty and presentable, it's a lot of time, and I usually have other things going on. But I said at the beginning that writing these, and any kind of writing really, is just pulling different ideas together and putting them together in a unique way. And the idea of having like a fake watch that Ryan gave, that's something I hadn't thought of before. Like doing counterfeiting for something that isn't money is an interesting concept and would lend itself to like creative clue presentation and things like that. So that might be an idea I steal, just maybe not in the Swiss Alps,
There you go. Hey, Ryan grew up near Chicago, and I used to live in Chicago, so we've seen just about everything counterfeited at one time or another.
Yeah, and there's some creative ways to dispose of your victims, like buckets full of concrete, stuff like that.
He's Ryan.
Uh-oh, Ryan's getting a little too into this.
Ryan's like, been there, done that.
There you go. Now Christy and Sammy know why I wanted to move to the small town.
All coming out. Whatever, you're like the sweetest
Awesome.
human.
Eric, well, this was great, man. Thank you for letting us participate in this. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you. You guys were great. Seriously, couldn't have done it without a good group.